All right. Well, we're in here. We are doing a pre-recording. Well, not a pre-recording. It's just a recording after Milan Cremonese. Obviously we have that up here. Martino, Puccio, Matt Santangelo. First time since prior to, I think right after the international break was the last time we recorded one of these. We had a good friend
Last time we had Russo, yeah.
Dan Russo on. Russo gave us some good luck. I think he really blamed us for what happened. But Napoli are basically on the verge tomorrow. By the time you're watching this, Napoli might be champions of Serie A for the first time in 33 years. Well deserved. But Matt, we're here to talk about Milan again. 2022, 2023, Serie A, garbage. Somehow in a Champions League semifinal, we're eliminated from Coppa Italia by Torino earlier this season. Milan draw Cremonese, man. I mean, 2 points in 2 games against the worst team in the league, albeit they're good defensively at times with the way they could grind matches out. But my goodness,
At
Champions League
home too.
rotation or not, yeah, this is at San Siro. I mean, this is just embarrassing. I think anyone defending a performance like this shouldn't they don't have a leg to stand on, but at the same time, I don't think anyone's defending today. Like, how could you?
No. Yeah, it's embarrassing. And I just tweeted something out. When I say just, obviously, as we preface, right, at the time of recording, moments after the final whistle, basically kind of running down some of the stats of recent games. I think since the victory over Atalanta, which feels like an eternity ago at the end of February, Milan have played 9 league matches. 2 wins. One was against Napoli, the 4-0. Impressive. No one's going to dispute that.
Sure.
And then the victory versus Lecce, which was predominantly a Rafael Leao masterclass. And we handled the game. We did.
Yeah.
But, it was Leao, the only guy scoring, right? Like, he was the guy taking care of business. Our top
Yeah.
player
Did everything. He did everything.
was, right? But then you draw Empoli, you draw Salernitana, you draw Cremonese, who we all drew in the first fixture earlier in the season back in, I think, November, if I'm correct? Sometime around there.
Yeah, and then again, even the match against Bologna, that wasn't even
And
that
Bologna.
far.
So
Yeah,
4 points against Bologna. No disrespect to Bologna. They have been playing better, but
they're in ninth. Yeah,
a team that you should beat, in my opinion. If you're the defending champion, you're a team that's making a pretty significant run in the Champions League, you should beat Bologna. But
yeah.
whatever. Empoli, Bologna, Salernitana,
Mm-hmm.
and now Cremonese. 4 points versus those teams. And the
3 of
Roma game,
those.
and the Roma game, which is the
Yeah.
5th draw in 9, you got lucky with a very late goal in the dying moments. Which
With
could have
no
very
Dybala, no
easily,
Wijnaldum, and Chris
yeah,
Smalling.
Smalling could have very easily been a loss.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. People are going to say, well, look, there's no easy games in Serie A. Say what you want. Would I take a little bit of that Max Allegri black magic where we shithouse our way to a 1-0 win against some of these provincial teams? 100%. And the people that would say about Max Allegri, oh, we all want to play good football, shitty football, this, we
It's getting you
defend against
results.
these. I want to win. I
Yep.
want to win. I want to see these teams win. Milan win against teams they should beat. Not this, but we play good football, but now we give up goals. No.
Yeah.
Because frankly, I would have taken a proper shithousing game against any of these teams and would have ran with it gladly, saying, hey, you know what?
3
It's gonna
points.
be
Straight
one
points.
of those years, right? We're not winning the title. But you know what? If we got to play a little sloppy, nasty, shithousing 1-0
Yep.
wins, no one scoring goals, CDK looking dreadful, so be it. Milan need to get top 4. That's the bigger picture. That's the big aim, right? We're not doing it.
No.
And
And
we
against the
have
worst
Lazio on
sides.
the weekend.
Yeah.
And the timing of this draw to Cremonese couldn't have been worse because around the bend, Lazio on the weekend on Saturday, 4-day turnaround time, right?
Yep.
Then you got the game against Inter, who are streaking. They playing really well, not only in the Champions League, but Big Rom, Dzeko, Altaro. They had a 6-0
Even Correa has woken up, and that's somebody
Correa.
who always tortures Milan.
And mind you, they're without Skriniar for the rest of the season, who's going to be
Yes.
leaving, right? So they're still getting results.
Their
despite
best
being
defender
injuries,
since the treble teams. Yeah.
Right. And Verona is a team that's on the fringe of being relegated. They handled the relegation team.
Yeah,
Lazio,
who's 6 points higher than Cremonese, and even to the point, real quick, so it doesn't get lost. Salernitana 14th place, Empoli 15th place, Cremonese 19th.
yeah.
Milan didn't win a game against them over these few weeks. Okay, 10
They also
draws.
didn't. They also didn't beat, if I'm correct. They didn't. They tied both games against Salernitana. I know they tied it recently.
No, they won the first one. They won the first
Okay,
one.
they won the first one.
It
Tied
was the
2
first
games.
game
You got
back.
2 points versus Cremonese, a team that's going to get relegated.
1 point versus Sassuolo.
1 point versus Sassuolo.
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe 3 points against Torino. They won and lost. Bologna, I believe they had a win and a
you know who
draw.
they have coming up too? They have the last place team coming up very soon.
Sampdoria is
And
the
then
final game of the season. I
no,
think.
the final game is against
It's
Verona.
Verona, sorry.
Also could be
I knew
relegated.
it was a relegation side for the final one.
So
And then Juve right before that. Okay,
and Spezia against Spezia.
in Turin. The last big team that they really have to face at this point, or the last two teams, are going to be Lazio and Juve.
Yeah.
The rest has just been left on the table. You're pretty much hoping these other teams slip up. With insides competing for a European spot this season, Milan is the only side within the top 7 to have 10 draws. No other side has more than 7. If you combine the draws between Atalanta and Inter, that's 7 and 3. That equates to the 10 that Milan have. Regardless of the losses that those teams have, Milan have left points on the table. That's even more frustrating than a straight up loss, in my opinion, because you positioned yourself for that. I mean, just getting caught out in counterattacks, the lack of clinical finishing. And again, I think it was Florenzi who made this comment not too long ago. I don't know if you remember this, but what Florenzi was saying was, and he wasn't wrong about this, I think it was translated poorly for people to understand. And what he was saying was, in some of the opportunities that Milan have had this season, or a lot of them, they would have gone in last year. And the finishing last year still wasn't pretty, but it was opportunistic. And they took advantage of their opportunities, like in the derby, even against Napoli when they were away. Those shots and chances are not going in this
Tonali against
and
Lazio.
Lazio as well. And they had to grind out results just to get the 3 points. They had to eke those out. That's 9 points right there on the table. The difference would have been substantial. There's 6 other points left if they don't finish those chances. It's a draw to Napoli. It's a draw to Inter. It's a draw against Lazio. So, like, there's so many opportunities left on the table. And this is why I consistently say this, and I know you agree with this too. There has to be a striker brought in this summer. There has to be a guy that guarantees you at least 15 goals in the league. At least 15. You have to get something like that. I'm talking about penalties being converted. Milan also don't even do a good job of trying to get penalties. They don't play well inside the 18-yard area. They're really poor at heading the ball as well. I don't know how many times I've seen a player receive the ball at his head and miss the target. CDK has been one of them. Brahim Diaz has been one of them. Malik Chow was one of them as well. You remember that tie in the first leg against Spurs at San Siro. There were 2 missed headers clear. That should have been a 3-0 win for Milan. You're leaving chances on the table, which people are correct about. That's when you blame the players. But also at the same time, you have to blame the manager. And there has to be someone saying something that the 11 put in here isn't good enough. And my thought on this, before I let you comment, because I want to switch it to CDK, my comment is this. If you know you have a player X set for 45 minutes today because you need to rotate, you mentioned the short turnaround with Lazio, and then you have Inter midweek. What you want to do, in my opinion, okay, you start them. And then you could sub them out. Because 60 minutes is 60 minutes. And technically speaking, if you take them out at the 60th minute, that's more time for them to start their recovery, okay, into the next match. I think there's reasons for that, and it's harder to get into the flow of the match. When a team like Cremonese is defending a 1-0 lead, when Rafael Leao is on, the guy completely changed the game. He immediately gives the best chance that we had of the evening outside of the CDK chance. It's just, you can't put your team in that type of position. They're playing poorly. They're not finishing properly. And everyone deserves
Giroud and Leao to come on and play hero ball. Like every game,
every time.
It's the reoccurring theme, right? It's Pioli rotates. On paper, you would say This team isn't great, but it's enough against this team to win. Then it's the 60th, 65th, 70th minute, and then you throw on Teo, you throw on Giroud, you throw on Leao, and you ask them to go and save your rear end. But at that point, the team you're playing against, if it's 0-0, 1-1, whatever, they're 2-1, either 1-1-0, they're ahead. If they haven't already been parking the bus, they're going to be parking the bus.
And look how they played. They were still playing behind the ball the entire time when it was 0-0.
To get into a game, I don't care what level you are, it's tough for a player to get into a game up and ready when, if you're in your head, if you're a Leao, you're a Giroud, and you're doing the prep work ahead of a game, ahead of kickoff, it's a different mindset. You're in the game, you're getting pumped up, you're able to go out there and say, hey, early and often, I'm going to assert myself in this game and I'm going to make my impact. Versus, they're playing in a low block and they're defending. It's tougher to break down. We see this all the time. We see this all the time. And look at what Inter did. Inter are a prime example of a team that they had Verona. That they have a team that isn't strong by any stretch. A team that they should handle on paper.
Still going to be fighting for their lives as well.
Who did they put in there? They put Dzeko. They still put Lautaro. They still had Hakan in there. They still had players capable of making the difference. They started them.
Yes.
They didn't wait. What did they do? They put 3 goals in the first half. The game is done and buried. If Milan do that, and Giroud, I understand he's been playing a ton. Maybe you want to put Origi in there because I think Origi had some moments where he was okay.
Out wide though. That's the thing.
Out wide. You put them to start the game. Maybe you're able to scrap 2 goals, and now all of a sudden, hey, let's yank off Leao. Let's give him the rest he needs from Lazio. You could play it differently. That's what I don't understand. People will say, the squad's enough. Well, clearly it's not enough because the guys that we're running out, we have a good sample size here. We're not talking about one off game or 2 off game. We're talking about a pretty substantial amount of games where the approach of rotating the guys in from the start is not getting the result. Every single game has ended the same. Literally has ended the same. We could have lost the game today. We had a fluke backheel goal, deflect around, and go into the net to get a draw at home versus a 19th place team. That is unbelievable. And if you're accepting this, then I just don't understand it anymore. If you don't understand the urgency and the dire situation that Milan are in for the top 4 conversation, then you have your head in the clouds. Because the games are slowly dwindling down. You have 4 games piling up. Quickly, it's going to be Lazio, then it's going to be Inter. And they could quickly turn bad, and Milan are in a position where we have to absolutely win every game outright the rest of the way, and need help. That's what it's coming down to. And then you're going to have to consider head-to-head, and then you're going to have to consider goal differential, and all these sorts of things. So I hope people aren't looking at this, and not that they are now. I think the vast majority of Milan fans are irate, and they understand how dire things are. But those who are still kind of in the camp of, we got games left, we got winnable games versus this, versus that, you don't understand the urgency then. You're just head in the clouds, and you're so fogged and blurred by what we're doing in the Champions League, and that's valid. That's important. That competition is very important. I get that. But we're not trending at the right time. At this point last year, Milan was trending in the right direction. Granted, they weren't slaughtering teams. They weren't winning every game, to your point, in dominant fashion against Lazio and even against Fiorentina. They weren't absolutely battering these teams, but they were getting results, and they had this little bit of edge to them where it was making the difference. They were a little bit quicker getting to a ball. They weren't making the fatal errors defensively that we saw today. Let's talk about that.
Kalulu took out Chow.
When you're not capable of scoring goals, the way we were not capable of scoring goals, not only could you not afford to have a pretty sizable or a good amount of rotation, you also have to be inch perfect and not put a foot wrong defensively. Milan did. There's the margin. The margin of error when Milan are playing this poorly against some of these teams and they're not able to score goals and be more efficient in the box, the margins are so fine. And sure enough, here it is. They both slip up and the guy just slots it home. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. This is what happens. This is what you get. And this is the one match where I think people are going to look at. If you weren't in the this is an emergency situation right now. This is the one people are like, yeah, this is an emergency. This is seriously bad. Because unlike in previous weeks where, you know what, we dropped the ball against teams that we should handle when our league rivals that we're competing directly with for top 4 stumbled. How many times did we look at, oh, Juve dropped the ball. It's a golden opportunity for Milan. Inter dropped the ball. It's a golden opportunity for Milan. Milan slipped up. And I was seeing how these matches were playing out in real time and how Juventus won the game earlier in the day. I was like, yeah, Milan, this is absolutely must win. If Milan don't get this game and they don't win 3 points here, I think they might not make top 4. This is the game.
No, they're not going to, in my opinion. I also just tweeted something right now, and I went to go check about it because I was thinking, because it was to the point about putting the starters in at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
There have been 7 matches in which Rafael Leao has not started for AC Milan this season. Within those 7 matches, Milan have won 1.
And one was
time.
The derby. One was
and
the
that was
derby.
against and that was against Monza 4-1 earlier in the season. Okay, we'll go through the defeats or the drop points. Cremonese did not start in that first 0-0 draw. Also today, 0-0 did not start. Bologna Milan does not start. 1-1 draw. Milan Empoli 0-0 draw, does not start. Comes in on the 70th minute. For whatever reason, when we knew at the time he did not start in the derby against Inter, Rafael Leao and Milan lose 1-0. And again, against Sassuolo, does not start. They lose 5-2. There is a walking theme here of who is the most valuable. He's irreplaceable. It's evident. They do not score. Not only within that, right? So if we actually look at all these games that he did not start for Milan, that he was eligible to start, by the way, because there was 2 suspensions. There was a red card suspension and he missed Napoli, and then there was the yellow card suspension against Fiorentina. In the matches in which Rafael Leao was with the squad and not starting, okay, this is how they scored without him. They scored 4 goals in the first match against Monza. Great. 0 goals against Cremonese. Okay. 2 goals against Sassuolo. 0 goals against Inter. And then what did I say? 0 goals against Empoli. 1 goal against Bologna. 1 goal against Cremonese. Okay? That's embarrassing. There's a lack of finishing. Okay? I don't care what you tell me. I think the defense is good enough. The midfield and the defense, in my opinion, is actually good enough to secure top 4 in Serie A. You know what's not good enough? The attack. It's just not. You don't have enough goal scorers, because I think what the funny thing is, when you look at people defending Kvara's performance against Milan in the Champions League, I think it was actually a warranted defense. He was doubled and triple teamed most of the time. They were being very physical with him because they have to be, because that's how big of a threat he is. The same goes for Rafael Leao. The difference between Milan and Napoli this season, it is a very staunch difference. Okay? One, their defense is way better. Secondly, they have Victor Osimhen. We're relying on an Olivier Giroud who is still playing in the World Cup for France, that went all the way to the World Cup final, and this guy's playing week in, week out. We send Lasetic over to Austria for a relegation side where Miroslav Klose gets sacked in the middle of the season. We send Colombo over to Lecce where he's producing. We have Zlatan Ibrahimovic picking up injuries, warming up, the same as Jurgen Klopp is doing while he's celebrating for Liverpool. You have no options. And then you put Origi there, who's not a striker. I'm sorry, he's not a striker. It's a different system than what Liverpool were playing over there. And then Rebic as well. Rebic, who's just supposed to be this running demon who can't do anything right, and on top of can't stay healthy. But now to the final topic and conversation of the day that everybody loves to talk about, because it's fair, and at this point, you would have hoped there was something. CDK. I don't know what his position is truly. I do know that he hasn't been put into specific positions to succeed. But as I've said multiple times over the past few months, and people don't want to listen to me when I say it because they think I blindly defend the kid, when in reality, I'm just not as harsh as other people. There is a level of acceptability when it comes to putting on this shirt. You and I have been doing podcasts for basically 7 years on this club. And back in 2016-17, when we started doing podcasts, one of the main things we were always frustrated with certain players on our team at the time, was the lack of effort and the lack of fight for the shirt, the lack of urgency. Charlotte de Ketelare hasn't showed any of that today, okay? And multiple times. He tries to make runs wide as a forward, doesn't work. There was one play where he's 20 yards offside before they even get the ball back. His body language is very poor. He's not pressing as much as he should.
Yeah.
He's not making the proper runs. You also said it yourself. He looks way too timid when he gets on the ball. He's scared to turn up and go upfield. Instead, he tries to make a pass back. He stutters. He's been too weak. He's losing ground duels. I think he was like 5 of 13 for ground duels. That's absolutely terrible, especially for a guy of his stature. Brahim Diaz, for example, does better with ground duels, okay?
Yeah.
A guy who loses the ball all the time, and that's a glaring issue, okay? So my thing is, if CDK is getting unfortunate with some finishes, which happens. He's hit the post. He's actually created some earlier in the season. That to me is annoying and it's frustrating when you spend that money on a player who is so young, but I think there's something to build off of that. The problem was, and it might cost him his career at Milan, is the lack of effort in trying to get better. Alexis Salamaker, someone that we praise all the time for his effort and some energy that he brings on the pitch, that's why we respect him at least. Okay?
Proof in the pudding too. Just real quick too on
Go
that.
for it. No, go take it from there.
Those two comps, it's interesting, right? Because you have a player that in CDK that the raving, the Champions League experience, the presence that he had at Club Brugge at a very young age. I think he was the captain for Club Brugge, played significant Champions League games for them, had some really good performances, put up big numbers, makes a big fee to AC Milan, holds out for AC Milan. This is a player that held out for AC Milan and basically saying, I only want Milan. This is the team I want to be at.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Case two, you have Alexis Salamakers, who's at the time, but very pretty much virtually unknown to most player coming from Belgium in January as a rotating option for a couple million, right? And everyone says this guy stinks. He can't do this, do this. He's a work rate merchant. He doesn't bring anything in the attacking third. Yada yada yada. What are we seeing in the past? Well, really this year, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing Alexis Salamaker score crucial goals in the Champions League.
Technically, almost had one today.
Right.
It was very marginal offside.
Should have had one. He was off. His head was offside by half his head.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other conversation about VAR, whatever. And a player that in the past couple weeks has come on strong. Everyone's saying, why is Pioli putting this guy in? Why are we getting more wingers? And I'm not saying we don't need to get a winger. We do. That's still a need. That's not the point here.
Yes.
No one's ever been able to discredit, question, or doubt or negate lack of effort with Alexis Salamakers. Press. And say what you want about him. Say what you want about his lack of productivity in the final third with goals and assists. That's something that he has improved on and still needs to improve on. He was crucial to what we did last year in winning the title. He was. He absolutely was. Yeah. He played a key role that didn't require necessarily goals, but for what he was asked to do, he did it really well.
To finish off matches, yeah. There were a lot of games in which Milan had like professional wins.
With CDK on the field today. With Brahim Diaz on the field today, with Divock Origi get paid what 3.5 to 4
3.5
player that has come from a Champions League winning team and one of the biggest clubs.
Some of the best Liverpool teams ever. Right? Yeah,
Brahim Diaz, a player that has this Jekyll and Hyde, purple patch of form type season every season. It feels, and a player that cost $30+ million.
Yeah.
Was the big coup of the summer, held out for only Milan, and Alexis Salamakers plays all three of them off the field. Now, he's been there the longest, or you could say he's been about the same as Brahim, right? Maybe a little bit less. But look at the effort. It's amazing what you could do when the guy gets adaptability. Coachability is a very important aspect of that as well, and work rate. A player that is still young, that has put up better numbers this year. I don't have it in numbers in front of me, goals and assists, but he's scoring goals in the Champions League. He's goals and assists in the league, and he's starting every week.
Yep.
And now people are saying, you know what? I got to give Alexis credit because you know what? People always said about his work rate. Now he's bringing and meshing the work rate with a little bit more goal and assist impact. I never understood that part of it, and I'm not trying to shit on CDK and make it seem as though that the guy isn't trying. Just from what I look at, it doesn't feel like he's really just emptying the tank and giving it all.
No, it doesn't.
2 minutes, and you're like, the guy has 16 passes, He doesn't register shots on goal. He's
Yep.
playing in positions where, he gets into the final third. I'd rather see a guy try to go out there and fail. I'd rather see him try to say, I'm going to take this ball. I'm going to take someone on.
And it's crazy
When
because
he's lost his head,
yeah.
when he's like, his first instinct as an attacker is getting the ball, quickly get rid of it. Okay, I don't want to make a mistake. When have we seen him, and is that down to just him, or is it down to also the coach? The coach motivating, right? Because we talk about that, right? It's not just putting the player in there and like FIFA, and he's got these many stats and this much quality, and then he's going to go out there and produce. Pioli also you have to manage not just the player, you also have to manage the person mentally.
Yeah.
Mentally, is the guy ready? Have I absolutely shattered his confidence? So there's a lot of people that I think are at fault for why CDK hasn't launched, why CDK hasn't done anything, why he hasn't scored a goal. It's the player, yes. Pioli's kind of handled it weird also. But as a club, we brought him in at a very late time in the season, in the preseason. So when you kind of throw all those things into the pot, you get a flop player. Right?
Yeah.
So far.
Absolutely. I think you're dead on. And then let's just even get into some of the statistics today. It's very funny because he's an incredibly efficient dribbler. He completed the most dribbles in the match. He had 5 of 7 completed. For instance, Rafael Leao, that's basically what he does. But here's where it's bad. 16 of 24 accurate passes. That's 67%. That's not good. Okay?
In 60 plus minutes.
Yes. You mentioned the dribbles were good. He had tackles, a couple of recoveries. Here's the issue again. Ground duels, 6 of 12, 50%. Not much there. This was actually one of his higher rated performances if you go off FUTMob. I think it's just mounting pressure. But for me, again, it's the effort part. Last question, I guess, before we wrap up here. I will ask this. There are some people who have already said that they're willing to sell him. It would really depend on a price, to be honest. I'm never not open to selling someone. I always pick up the phone, is what I believe. I would only really do this unless I get a substantial offer from someone, and it could, or not a substantial offer where you could almost break even, similar to Paqueta, or you get some. If that deal is on the table for Højlund, why would I say no for Højlund? Højlund has been proven already in this league. I think CDK would work at Atalanta. There's a lot less pressure there. I think Gasparini would be able to assimilate him into that squad. And to be honest with you, I think Milan hold on to him because I think they know deep down that they have some faults in this as themselves. I think he needs to adapt further. I also, and again, he's incredibly young. He's 22 years of age. There's a very young player there. Okay. And the expectations are very high. We've seen players struggle at other clubs all the time. Chelsea's the poster child for that. My question is, do you actually give up on him this soon? Because I feel like that isn't a crazy thing to do. It kind of isn't. And I only say this because of a shattered confidence. And it comes across like the confidence is shattered. And I know we don't talk to him every day. And he's actually even said it himself. He's like, I'm not showing up to Milanello crying. Tonali defends the guy publicly. Other players are defending him and giving him encouragement. It's tougher. I mean, Tonali even said it himself again. I went through the same thing. My first year was awful at Milan. I struggled all the time. And Tonali had more pressure than any player I can imagine showing up to play for a club. Yeah. Can you remind me of one? Takes the same path as Pirlo, similar hairstyle, grew up a Milanista, constantly getting compared to the greatest Italian midfielder of all time. That's hard. That's very tough to adjust to.
Yeah.
CDK, what do you do? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting, right? Because I think you saw how quickly they were able to turn around Paqueta and Piontek, 2 players they bought for, I think, around a similar fee in January, right, of 2018, 2019, something around there, right? When they still had Boban and all that stuff, right? So I look at this situation and I think nothing's ever off the table.
Mm-hmm.
If a Leeds, a Newcastle, Atalanta do some sort of swap deal for player, hey, we'll give you him. You give us a little bit of cash plus CDK, and we make a deal happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's off the table, especially in the way the sport is, where you're, hey, you know what, where Milan have been in positions quite clearly where they've been able to say, you know what, they did it with Gianpaolo, they sacked him. Like when it's not working, we know it's not working. We're just going to make the decision now versus wait until it's too late, right? And they did that with Piontek. And look at Piontek, he's nothing. Paqueta, they sold him. Everyone said, they sold him to Lyon, blah 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 blah. Then they were able to recoup some money. He sold to West Ham, and he ain't really doing spectacular at West Ham.
No, they're struggling
No,
as a team. Yeah.
right? So I don't think it's off the table because I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of people at fault for why he hasn't really been able to adapt the way everyone expected and thinks he should based off the quality we've seen. At Club Brugge, excuse me. But I think at the same time, you look at it and think, well, the situation won't change. He won't feel less pressure if we don't get the right amount of supporting cast and players up front that can help alleviate that pressure. And what I mean by that is, you mentioned Napoli, right? How Kvara, was blanketed by multiple defenders in the Champions League games against Milan, and he struggled, and people made that a talking point. And everything. Try to diminish. Like, the guy's a spectacular player. He's doing really well. You could see him 1v1. He's electric. He's very good. But I think you look at a team like Napoli, and they have several different guys who could score goals. Politano can give you goal output. You have Osimhen. You have Simeone. You have Kvara. You have you have guys, Raspadori, right? Like scoring crucial goals in the Champions League and also burying Juve with a late goal. Like, you have guys and options where he's saying, hey, you know what? If it's not CDK's night, we can take him out. We're going to put someone, we're going to get that result. Yeah. When you kind of compound the fact that he struggled and Milan are struggling to get results, and the games he does play, Milan are absolutely in crucial situations where they need 3 points, and he's doing what he's doing, which is nothing. It becomes a much more heavier and much more of an issue on his shoulders. If Milan are going to still continue to insist on kicking the can down the road, not addressing the attack and reensuring that we're going to get this attack on track and we're going to be more efficient, we're going to be a team that has guys that can put the ball back then, and it's going to struggle and waste of time, in my opinion, to keep CDK, because it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be Leao and occasional Giroud ball, and you make the sign of the cross and you hope that you get goals, and those goals get you results. That's how I feel about it. That's how I personally feel about it. And, it's people will point to say, Leao had struggles year one. We saw glimpses of what Leao could do, right? That goal against Fiorentina, that was like a little sample of like, hey, you know what?
The only thing he did, yeah.
When Leao's in the game and he is confident and he's in good form, he could take over games. And obviously, the rest is history. You know what type of player he is and what player he's become. But there's a difference between that, right? With CDK, maybe day to day, maybe he's not having the same involvement. People lamented the importance of Ibrahimovic, being able to take a guy like Leao under his wing and say, hey, you know what? Like, I can train with this guy day to day, game to game. I can coach him through a game. I can help him navigate a game and see how he can make an impact. Maybe that is something that hasn't really helped CDK because of Ibrahimovic being out. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that. I think at this point in time, Ibrahimovic has been so distant from the starting 11 and the squad in general that you really have to say, hey, you're a 30 million plus player. You're a professional. Like, you should be a self-starter. You should be self-motivated. You're playing for Milan. This is the club you held out for. Yep. It shouldn't require someone to say, come on, Charles, let's go play. You should go out and say, hey, I'm
that's what I was saying when you, myself, and Pep were talking about Ndombele with Spurs. At the time when he arrived, he's like a 60 million pound signing, and the guy needs to be motivated. Who needs to motivate you? I'm motivated for my garbage league where I play with fat people who can't run. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm motivated. I got paid nothing. In fact, I pay to play. So, okay, I know I'm not a professional, but I do know what effort means, and I do know that anytime that I am doing my job and someone is expecting something out of me, I'm putting my 100% effort, no matter what it is. And the fact that that isn't a thing with him frustrates me. And I think you're right. I hope it turns around. I'm inclined to say no, just because you've never seen someone turn it around after ridicule like this.
Yeah.
Luka Modric.
It's to the point where you're saying like how far removed are they? Like, is it too far gone at this point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends, I guess, on himself and what the club thinks.
Look at here. This is Leao's first season at Milan.
Yeah.
He played in 2019, 2020. Minutes played, he played 1394. I don't know if you have the CDK numbers up here. 1394 for Leao. 6 goals, 1 assist.
Yeah, but in Serie A though? Serie A?
In Serie A.
Okay.
This is from FootMob.
Yeah.
6 goals, 1 assist in 1394 minutes. For a player that arrived for almost around 30 million, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When we really weren't in a position where we were going to spend that much money, and people were looking at who this Leao guy was, when we were like, we have all the pressing needs and we're spending a really big chunk on a player that a lot of people weren't quite familiar with, right? Yep. 6 goals, 1 assist. Like, at least you got like a little piece of like, Leao's got something. And we said that going into his third season. We were talking about this. We said first season's the final straw last year. We said, hey, if he doesn't step up and take that next level, I think you might be in a position to sell him. You might be inclined. 3 years is quite a bit. And we've even said the same thing about Raheem, right? Like, multiple seasons on loan, playing pretty substantial minutes as a starter. You can't really hang the whole excuse of, well, he's coming off the bench, he's playing garbage minutes. There's something to be said about a player that's able to, like Alexis, where he's able to just consistently burst in and get minutes and convince Pioli that he deserves those minutes.
Because he does, I know
that CDK hasn't been maybe managed the best way, but I'm sorry, given the fact that Milan really don't score enough goals, and really it's Leao and a 35, 36-year-old striker, it, in my head, shouldn't take much for CDK to say, you know what? I'm breaking in and I'm getting more minutes than I am. I'm getting more starting nods than I am.
Do you buy the he's not a 10 because he's not issue as well? That he's starting the majority of the games as a 10, but he was really a center forward at Bruges. I think that kind of hurts him too. And again, still not making excuses. I think that, again, that's the part on Milan's fault. He has missed 5 big chances, by the way. So big chances are basically considered what you see to be, he should have finished that. It's just the easiest translation into the eye test, people. He's hit the post multiple times. And this is what I was kind of trying to tell people today. I think today's chance wasn't the worst one at all that he's missed. First of all, this was a tough one. Carnesecchi recognizes the ball being lost. CDK obviously moves up. That space closed down, and the angle that he had was non-existent. It was good goalkeeping. However, you remember that first Salernitana match where he basically gets the ball in front of him and he doesn't know what to do in front of goal, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
That was bad. He's hit the post a couple of times. There's also been moments this season as well where he has set up his teammates to finish off chances, but he just hasn't done it. So, like, to me, it's kind of funny where, say, 2 or 3 go his way. 2 to 3 are lucky. Then we're looking at 4 or 5 goal contributions this season and just a little over 1,000 minutes played. That's really not the worst.
Different conversation, and you and I know, like, it's.
But that's not going to be had on Milan.
You and I know, though, like, the game is more than just a goal and assist, right? Because a guy can complete 99% of his passes as an attacker. He can create 7 chances as a playmaking, right? And he can do everything you can, and the players around him can blow 6 or 7 of his chances, and he could have no goal or assist to show for it. And people will say, he didn't get a goal or assist. He's an attacker. He has to get at least one of those, right? So we know the game is beyond goals and assists by now, right? Expected goals, advanced metrics, we all know that. But psychologically speaking, when they're not coming in, when they're not pouring into the back of the net, and players aren't getting assists, and he hasn't, and people can look and say, I mean, no goal and assist again. Like, I didn't do anything. He's played 70 minutes, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 40 minutes off the bench against a minnow team. It has to wear on you when you come with that fee. It just does. But I think at the end of the day, again, I think people have to kind of consider the fact that, there's more. Milan have hit on a lot of their transfers. They have.
Yeah.
Vast majority of them have hit on. And you can really make a strong case. I know people are going to probably give me shit on this, but Alexis Salamaker's fee has been a good addition, right? He plays pretty much every game.
Mm-hmm.
He adds an element to your team that is crucial to how you play and how you're able to win games. And he came at a very modest fee, and he's young and he's growing. So that's how I feel about it. But we can go on and on about players and other players. I think the topic of conversation here obviously is CDK. And look, I'm not saying I'm in the camp where I'm ready to give up on him. I just think it's very frustrating to watch when I see I'm like that he doesn't seem like there's that little bite to him. Like that little like that burning passion saying like, this is the game. I'm going to take a shot on goal. I'm going to take guys on.
Part of me just wishes Gattuso was here to smack him upside the head.
He just doesn't. He doesn't show that. He doesn't show that little bit of bite, and that's unlike. Again, we're comparing apples and oranges here. But even when Leao, people use that as a bit of a complaint and gripe with Leao in his first season. He dribbles too much. He doesn't make the right decision. You know what? I want a player that's saying, I'm getting the ball. I'm doing something with this. He don't have that. He don't have that little bit of an edge, a little bit of a bite, a little cockiness to him that, people said was an issue with his teammate at Club Brugge that we were also interested in, Noah Lang. People said he's cocky. Sometimes you need that.
Yep.
Sometimes you need that little arrogance when you play the game. You do. Right? So there's towing a line between having too much arrogance, but having the right amount where it's able to be channeled in a way that gets results. And that's what I think CDK has to find, and he hasn't found yet.
We'll see if he ends up finding it. Hard pressed to see what is going to happen. He still has a few matches to maybe prove himself. I don't know if he's going to get on as a sub. I'm just really curious to see his minutes towards the end of the rest of this year. Because again, body language was the real big thing with him. But again, if we look at it, this is the most he's played only since October 1st. Charlotte de Ketelare has only played over 60 minutes 3 times. Multiple performances where he's on a lot. And he's also still not starting with Rafael Leao. I can't even remember the last time he was playing and starting with him. I think there's a lot of blame to go around. Ultimately, CDK, horrendous first season with Milan. Who knows what ends up happening with his future? Matt, always amazing to talk to you. We appreciate everybody who tunes in whenever we do these. We got the new thumbnail going and all that stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you have not subscribed already to the YouTube channel, please do so. Follow Milan Bros on Twitter. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt_Santangelo. Follow me on Twitter at Martino Puccio. And yeah, I guess follow me on Instagram as well and all those other spots like TikTok. Any last things before this weekend ahead of Lazio and Inter?
If you don't get anything against Lazio, it might be curtains, to be honest.
For top 4, yeah. I agree with you on that. Well, hopefully it's not that. They play at San Siro this weekend, so we'll see what happens. Take care, guys.